Okay, so if you struggled a little bit with understanding the 3 different ones, you should probably stop and go back through them. You don't need to understand biochemistry. What you need to know is creatine phosphate is 1 ATP per 1 creatine phosphate. It's 1-to-1, and it's a quick recycling. You need to know glycolysis is a few ATP, and muscles that use that are muscles that contract for short periods of time, but they'll tire out quickly. And that aerobic metabolism, cell respiration, utilizes a lot of different molecules. It requires oxygen, requires mitochondria. Cells make a lot of ATP, and those tissues tend to be ones that contract slowly and over long periods of time. And that's what we've been talking about. If it's a slow oxidative fiber, it contracts slowly over a period of time. It doesn't fatigue or tire out easily, and it does oxidative metabolism. Fast oxidative contract quickly, but they also use that same kind of metabolism. Fast glycolytics contract quickly, and they're the ones that do glycolysis. They only make a little ATP, so they tire out quickly. Alright, then in lecture we went on to how muscles change when they're exercised. Aerobic exercise, meaning you ran, you swam, you walked quickly, anything that made your heart rate go up. Muscles respond to that by increasing the number of capillaries they have for more blood flow, making more mitochondria so they can make more ATP, and making more myoglobin so they can store more oxygen. All of that requires ATP energy from the body. When you weight train, or you don't have to do what this guy's doing, but when you lift against an object, that's resistance exercise. That's usually anaerobic. Muscles get bigger because they make more myofilaments, they store more glycogen, they make more mitochondria. Anytime muscles are exercised, they do have this ability to kind of fatigue, and we've said this several times. And what happens is they run out of ATP. The ATP they made can't keep up with the amount of ATP they needed to go through their cycling. So what often happens is sometimes they'll either relax and be unable to contract again and hurt, or they'll lock in position. You'll get a complete tetanus. Either way, they'll tend to build up lactic acid. Lactic acid was a byproduct of that glycolysis. It's very acidic, and it causes quite a bit of muscle damage, and that's when they hurt the next day. And also, ions can be out of balance. Oxygen debt. Whenever you exercise, people sometimes hear that after they exercise, especially if they weight train or resistance exercise, that their metabolism goes up for about a half an hour afterward. And that's true, because after a muscle is exercised vigorously, it has to reestablish and put back all the resources it just used. And so it's got to kind of bring more oxygen in. It has to do some metabolism, get rid of the lactic acid. It's got to replenish its glycogen. It has to resynthesize everything it made. And that requires the cell to just make a lot of ATP to accomplish all that work. So oxygen debt is what happens after vigorous exercise, and it's what happens when a muscle's kind of trying to return to its original state and replace everything. That's when you feed it a little bit of protein to help it repair. Smooth muscle. So now that you all understand all about skeletal, we're going to look at how smooth muscle is different. Structurally, they have endomysium only. You tend to find, especially in the intestinal tract, in 2 layers on different planes, and you tend to find it in the walls of tubes, hollow organs. It can accomplish peristalsis. That's waves from your mouth to your anus. All the tube along the way has a coordinated contraction to push things through the tube. Segmentation is a little different. Segmentation is intestinal tract as well. But in segmentation, you actually kind of section off pieces and you squish back and forth to mix. Dilation or constriction tends to be blood vessels. Dilation and constriction can also be bronchioles, tubes within the respiratory tract. functionally, they also have a stretch, relaxation, contraction response. If you stretch them, some of them will relax, some of them will contract automatically and then relax. So they do have their own little reflex that's inherent. In this picture, you can see a longitudinal layer and a circular layer. One of these contracts, it would make the tube shorter. The other one would contract and it would make the diameter of the tube smaller. And that's how your intestinal tract works. Alright, so what's special and different about them? They do not have motor end plates. They have cavali instead. They have no striations. Their myofilaments are kind of cross-hatched. And when their myofilaments contract, the entire cell kind of just twists and shrinks. Some of them can self-depolarize and have a pacemaker potential. They can have gap junctions. They can contract in sheets. And they don't have a traditional neuromuscular junction. They have varicosities. So this is what's special about smooth muscle and what makes it different. Their contraction mechanism is very, very similar. It relies on calcium getting released. Calcium is released with action potential. The only thing that's different is they don't have troponin. They have something called calmodulin instead. But that's enough about what's different about them. Also, what's different about smooth muscle is some smooth muscle can divide. Skeletal muscle, no way. And an example of smooth muscle that can divide is that which is in the uterus. Because of the hormone estrogen during puberty and pregnancy, the uterus muscle layer can grow. And the last bit about smooth muscle is single unit versus multi-unit. Single unit smooth muscle is the traditional smooth muscle. Sometimes it's called visceral muscle as well. It contracts as a unit. They have gap junctions. Stretch them and they'll generate their own action potential. They occur in big sheets. That's all single unit. Multi-unit are found in different places. Multi-unit smooth muscle is airways of lungs, big arteries, the erector pili muscles, and muscles inside your eyes. Multi-unit acts more like skeletal muscle. Gap junctions are very rare. For the most part, they don't spontaneously depolarize. You actually need to fire a motor neuron on them. They have a lot of nerve supply. They can behave in a kind of graded response way. And they can even contract individually, independently. So, multi-unit acts like skeletal. Single unit is traditional smooth muscle.